once again with the best albums of the month. This time we're talking about the month of April. It is meant to be a series where I talk about albums that actually came out in that month, but it has inadvertently become just albums I heard in that month. So whether they actually came out in January, February, March or whatever, they'll get mentioned here. It doesn't matter, you're getting extra music talked about, it's extra recommendations. It's not a big deal. With that being said though, I should definitely start by mentioning the albums that did come out way back in January, because it has been a few months now, and they are still worth mentioning though, because I got to them late and they have become, you know, regular favorites for the year. The REOL album, I still think, I'm not sure if I'm saying REOL correctly, I don't know, REOL, a fantastic artist here who just puts out ridiculous pop bangers. The album, I think, still has a few flaws with the way that it kind of flows. Like, there are some tracks that don't really hype me up as some of the really larger than life moments. They're just some of the best moments, like Hype Mode, the first track, some of the tracks towards the end as well. Like, they're ridiculously over the top fun pop bangers. But I've been going back to so many of the tracks that's kind of making me think maybe by the end of the year this could easily slip into the year-end list. We shall see how things go, but it's definitely worth a try. I think there'll be a lot of people that will enjoy this, especially if you're just into some really like clashing electro pop stuff. You know, if you like Charlie XCX, I couldn't see why you wouldn't enjoy this at least. Another album to mention here in the mindless fun category, I guess you could call it, Key Glock, also came out in January, but I only got to it a few about a week ago-ish at this point, I think. Yeah, about a week ago-ish. Find it really fun. I think Key Glock brings a lot to his delivery, and you know, his flows really catchy as hell as well. Some of the hooks he comes out with, I just find it to be one of the better trap releases I think I've heard, not only this year but in quite a few years as well. I've spoken to a few people about this album at this point, and it seems as though I'm kind of in the minority with thinking it's as good as it is. So I don't know how much of a recommendation I can truly offer, because this might just be one of those albums that is hitting me personally, and then everyone else is kind of like, yeah, whatever. You have those albums every year. It happens to any reviewer or any critic or whatever. There's always those like 2 or 3 albums that no one really cares for, and yet you're all just like loving it. So check it out if you're wanting some trap. But I can't really guarantee you'd like this one that much, but hopefully you like it as much as I do. Very similarly with REOL, actually, like these two releases seem to just have easy like pick and choose tracks every now and then. At any point in the day you just kind of put them on, you get hyped for those few minutes, and then it's like, yeah, and then you move on to something else. Next I want to mention Pablo Nouvelle. This did actually come out in April of this year, and it is becoming one of my favorite electronic releases of the year, one of the best house releases I've heard this year, and it's actually quite simple in its presentation. Like, you could easily listen to this and think of it as being generic deep house, but actually, you know what, I think there's just such a great attention to groove from this guy that you can't really resist the urge to just put these songs on and just be like. A common theme this year has been electronic releases. I do wonder if it's just that I'm hearing more of them this year than I ever have in previous years, or they actually are just getting really good. But Pablo Nouvelle is a good addition to that list. I'm finding so much great music from recommendations of other people. Shout out to Josh as well, he's finding loads of great stuff this year, and this was a hit. Just like Mujuice was, another electronic release this year, kind of like acidy deep house once again. Even though you could categorize both of the albums here I've just mentioned, Pablo and Mujuice, as house releases, but there's a night and day difference in how they sound. Like Pablo goes for much more like groove and slick sounding production, whereas Mujuice goes for a bit more like technical and more attention to detail. It's a great album. It really is a friggin' great album. Rhythm Moskva is the name. Yeah, I'm just in awe of this genre this year. What? By far and away 2 releases here that are just going to get completely swept under the rug by the end of the year. and it just pains me. We're only in April, but it pains me to think that we're going to get to year-endless season and 2 albums like this are just going to get mentioned by nobody. It is truly a shame, but I hope you check them out. I highly recommend them, especially Pablo, because I think Pablo will reach a larger audience. But Mujuice, I think is a great one as well. The most recent review I did on this channel was Ichiko Aoba's live album. This came out at the beginning of April, but I didn't actually get to it until pretty later in the month. But it was worth the wait, of course. This is Ichiko Aoba, wonderful musician from Japan, just incredibly minimalist and sparse, and uses just so little, and yet the impact is greater than you could ever imagine. Truly one of my favorite musicians, probably of all time actually. She does have some of my all-time favorites in just music in general. So of course a live version of what she does in the studio is having a very similar impact, to be honest. Yeah, it runs a little long. I definitely think you get to like the hour mark and you probably could, you know, maybe chop off a few tracks. It gets a bit samey in its sound, but it's a good starting point because I think it just kind of captures exactly what she does so well, and it's a very well groomed live album. This one feels like it came out ages ago at this point, but it did come out at the beginning of April, and that is the Yves Tumor album. A complete shift in sound. Like, this is an incredibly admirable and brave album to release like 2 years after Safe in the Hands of Love. I'm in awe of that, to be honest, how different it sounds. It's a much more romantic album. Some of these tracks are straight up love songs on here. Some of the tracks feel like they came straight out of the 80s. The glam oozing on this album is incredibly in your face, but I think Yves managed to mostly pull it off. I think the final leg of the album is pretty weak, to be honest, but there's just the songs at the beginning, like, some fantastic ones there. Some of my favorite from Yves in general. Yeah, like the opening track, still one of my favorites of the year. There is greatness to be found on this album. Yeah, there's definitely people out there that seem to be loving this way more than I am, but God, it deserves a mention, even if I don't fully love it and I don't fully embrace everything that we were given on this album, because it just deserves a mention anyway. It really is an impressive release, and again, some of the most impressive songs of the year, I think, land on this album. Of course, that leaves me with my album of the month now. I think you know it already based on the fact that it is my most positive review of the year. Fiona Apple's Fetch the Bolt Cutters. This album, man, I really hate to be that guy, but I think attempting to recapture the essence of some of the things I said in my review here would just kind of dim down my actual review, to be honest, because I did go into a lot of detail there, and I was pretty happy with how it ended up being. So I think nothing else needs to be said. If you've watched my review, you will know exactly why I think of this album so highly, and if you haven't, I would definitely urge you to go watch that review, because yeah, I think I'll explain a lot more there than I could possibly even imagine to do again here. I'm still in awe of what she does even to this day. I think the remarkable consistency of her work is to behold. She really is one of my all-time favorites, and I guess it was no real surprise to anyone that I would end up loving this as much as I did, but I think it's worthy of its praise because of how she just does it. As usual, there will be songs appearing on the screen of some of my favorites of the month, including some, you know, from previous months that I've gotten to late, and I should also include a link to the playlist in the description box, although you fools choose Spotify over Apple Music, so maybe you don't deserve the link. You don't deserve it. You pick Spotify. Now let me know your favorites in the comments, your favorites of the month, some albums that I haven't mentioned that you think deserve to be here, and your thoughts on the albums that I mentioned as well. Thank you for watching this video. Have a good day and goodbye.